Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for Thursday Talks. We're delighted that today's talk will focus on the work of Lizette Olivas and will be a conversation between Lizette and Christina Fernandez. Before the program begins, we at UCR ARTS would like to first respectfully acknowledge and recognize our responsibility to the original and current caretakers of this land, water, and air, the Cahuilla, Gabrielino Tongva, Luiseño, and Serrano peoples, and all of their ancestors and descendants, past, present, and future. Today, this meeting places home to many Indigenous peoples from all over the world, including UCR faculty, students, and staff, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work and live on these homelands. Today's talk is the second in a series of talks around the exhibition Tierra Entre Medio, which is at the Culver Center of the Arts through April 2nd. Tierra Entre Medio is a multi-generational exhibition that foregrounds 4 Chicana photographers working in Southern California. It features new works by Christina Fernandez, installed alongside works by Arlene Maharado, Lizette Olivas, and Heidi Ortiz. Tierra Entre Medio is organized by UCR ARTS and is curated by Christina Fernandez with Joanna Szupinska, senior curator. The exhibition is organized in conjunction with Christina Fernandez Multiple Exposures, a major survey exhibition concurrently on view at the California Museum of Photography until February 5th. So I'll now turn it over to Joanna to introduce our guests.
Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce our guests today. Lizette Olivas is a San Bernardino-based photographer who earned her BA in art at UCLA in 2014. Using portraiture and landscape photography, she chronicles daily lives as well as the urban and exurban landscapes of inland Southern California. Christina Fernandez is a Los Angeles-based photographer and associate professor at Cerritos College in Norwalk. She selected all the works included in Tierra Entre Medio, and we're so grateful for her for bringing our attention to Lizette's work. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so this is the third time you would think I would have this down. But I just wanted to welcome everybody today. I'm really looking forward to this talk. I'm going to get to see some images outside of the images that are being shown at the show. And at this point, I hope everybody has made it down to see the show at the Culver Center. It's magnificent. These three young Chicana photographers are doing amazing work. So I'll give it over to Lizette.
Hello. So first I wanted to thank Lindsay and Joanna and Christina for putting the show together and giving me this wonderful opportunity. So thank you very much. I also wanted to thank all my friends and family and anybody who's ever participated in my work or helped me go out and shoot. And I really wanted to give a special thank you to Heidi and Juan, because without their help, their motivation, their faith in my work, I wouldn't have a lot of the opportunities that I do. So thank you, everybody. So I'm gonna go ahead and start my slideshow. So it's Tierra Entre Medio. And so my name again is Lizette Olivas. And so I was gonna first just kind of start off with some of the gallery shots. These particular were taken by Nikolai, and so thank you. Some of the installs. And so I kind of really just wanted to start with this particular image. I think it's, at least for what I've been told, is it's a favorite, I think, because of the cinematic quality. And it really is one of my more conceptual bodies of work. It's titled Ferndale Alley. I shot this series. It's a part of a series called Abandoned But Not Forgotten that I shot my senior year at UCLA. It is part of a 6-image series, and then I ended it as an installation at the gallery at UCLA. This particular series is an ode to my couch. I had this couch, I don't even know how long, I mean, over 10 years. So for me, it was very lived on. I had friends who lived with us sleep on the couch, party on the couch. And when I had to move, you know, if you can see, it's really not in the best condition. So it was just kind of something that I couldn't take with me or didn't really want to take with me. And so before I got rid of it, I photographed it around the city of San Bernardino and created this series. And so we're just going to kind of go through some of the other images that are, you know, in the series. This one is taken on a dead-end street near the Mount Vernon Bridge. This one here is taken across the street. I think it's a Metrolink train station in the parking lot. This is in an alley near my home. It's kind of near Paris Hill Park and Pacific High School. And this is in my front yard, and it's kind of an empty lot. And so this particular image here is, you know, kind of just all the images together with an installation shot. So I kind of get really neurotic and I shoot both color and black and white a lot of the times because I'm not sure what mood I'm trying to evoke. And specifically during this time, I didn't really shoot color. So I was tasked by a professor to kind of try to incorporate it. So originally I showed it as a 6-piece black and white set, but because of the color one being chosen for this particular exhibition, I just showcased what that looked like in color. And so this is basically, like I said, so this is kind of the only conceptual body of work that I really have. I guess the way that I work is mostly just kind of, I just shoot. So I just kind of go out and everything is been based mainly in San Bernardino. And so the way it really worked for me was I went to school in LA and I found that most of the work that I feel like we do is very based in Los Angeles. And I felt that there wasn't any work really being done about the Inland Empire, which I found really interesting because I ended up listening to a talk on UCR ARTS here on YouTube where Doug McCullough specifically goes into, I think it was like 50 years in the sun. I can't remember right now, sorry. And so my focus basically is within the Inland Empire. So I grew up in the San Gabriel Valley in a pretty middle-class neighborhood. Kind of, I had everything. And so we moved out to San Bernardino around the recession. So we had lost everything and the landscape was completely different from anything that I had experienced in my youth. And I felt really humbled by the people that I came in contact with. And so for me, there was a really big interest specifically in the city and the way that people live. I have lots of I don't know how to say it. So I shoot the city, and within the city, there are like sub genres that I really gravitate to. And so a lot of what I see when I do go out are memorials. And so I find that it's quite beautiful how people put together these memorials for their loved ones. Some of them, you know, pass away in car accidents, other in gun violence. And so I thought it's so precious the way that these, you know, families come together and create these, you know, memorials. And some of them have been out there for years. This particular one has been out there for years and they're maintained. And so what I find as well is while I shoot, I go out and I'm really interested in these locations and how they evolve. So with San Bernardino, there will be businesses and then, you know, within sometimes years or months, these businesses close down or vice versa. There'll be empty lots and then a business will, you know, erect itself in that place. So I find that I visit these locations multiple times to photograph the changing scenery. This particular image I thought was really interesting because I was here in the gallery and I was like overhearing somebody discuss whether or not this was taken during COVID. And so I found that really interesting because it was like actually in 2016 that this image was shot. So it had nothing to do with COVID, but I feel like that emptiness resonates with people, you know, after 2020. This also was taken during COVID, which I think most of us found really isolating. And so the way I really shoot is I kind of just go out. So I always have my camera with me, whether it's in my car and I'm purposefully going out and scouting locations and going out to shoot, or sometimes what ends up happening is I'll just be driving or walking. And because I have my camera, I find these really interesting moments and I try to capture that. So I used to live really close to this area. So I would walk around frequently, like walk my dog. And so, like I said, I usually just carry my camera with me. I shoot all mediums, 35 millimeter, medium format and large format. Primarily, I used to really shoot large format, but I found that it's obviously very difficult to go out and shoot street photography that way. So what I ended up doing was purchasing a large format camera and kind of utilizing that in place of, you know, my large format. And because, you know, I use Mamiya 6.7, so it's 6x7, and I found that the frame size is very similar to 4x5, whereas 35 millimeters is a little bit more rectangular, and felt that it fit better with a lot of my portrait work. And I particularly solely shoot film. And I feel like because I'm a very anxious individual, it caused me to slow down and really think about each individual shot and how I'm framing, specifically because I also shoot, I'd say like 98% of the time, everything's full frame. So what you see is what you get, unless there's really just something in, you know, in the image where I'm like, it has to go. I'll crop, but it's very, very, very rare that I do. I also find that I'm very interested, like with the memorials, in death. I don't know if that has to do with coming from kind of like a gothic death metal background where I'm really into morbid imagery. I mean, specifically was very drawn to Joel Peter Whitkin's work. It's very inspiring to me. I mean, I create work that's nothing like that, but I absolutely love his work. And I think that, you know, life and death is it's something that's very powerful for me personally. And I find that I photograph churches a lot. I'm really into repetition. I was also very inspired by Ed Ruscha and his 26 gasoline stations and this kind of mundane, mediocre, almost flat landscape. And so I think that it's not something that I aspire to do, but I feel like because of my background and where I come from, it's something that just transcends through my work. Also started shooting a lot of abandoned churches originally because I was an atheist. And so I had this interest in people visiting, you know, churches for all kinds of reasons. And in around 2016, I had a pivotal moment where it kind of switched for me. So I kind of now just shoot churches in this respect that I have, you know, for religious and spiritual purposes. And really, it's just me going out and shooting the city because I really just kind of, you know, I love it so much because where I come from, like I said, I was raised in San Gabriel Valley, so everything was very quaint. I had, you know, my dad is a union man. We had family vacations. And I found that when I came to San Bernardino, when I meet people, I think that from what they tell me, their upbringing, it was nothing like mine. And growing up, I didn't really think that people, may call me naive, but I lived the American dream. So I really didn't think that people, you know, lived in some of the manners that they do in impoverished neighborhoods here, you know, in California and all over the US. And I found it very humbling. I've had instances in affluent neighborhoods where nobody will help me. And being in San Bernardino, I feel there's this kind of stigma on the type of people that live there. Yet they are the people that offer the most. I think I've been broken down so many times, and people in the city, I will always come and help me without me asking. I've had people come and push me out of the street, and I find that it's a really beautiful thing. And I don't think people think, of the ghetto like that. It really is its own community. This is Paris Hill Park. It's a park I used to frequent quite often. Again, it's near one of the couch images. My favorite thing to photograph are people. I found that I substitute cityscapes and landscapes sometimes because, it's a little bit difficult or more difficult to find individuals to photograph because some people just don't want their picture taken. And so for me, it's just, I always feel like I have to make some kind of work. I had this thing where I would go out. I would make sure that I went out at least 3 times a week to go shoot, even if it was just 1 frame a day. And so I have, an abundance of work. So I'm trying to. So this particular image, I had seen him the day before at the laundromat off of Sterling. And I tried to take his portrait without him knowing, which is something that I normally don't do. I'm really big on asking for permission, just because when I went to UCLA, it was the first time I was introduced to kind of an exploitative way of photographing. There's lots of photographers who kind of just are in your face and photograph. And I think that that's a completely wonderful and needed way to express yourself photographically. But for me personally, I feel like I need permission. And so he had noticed, and so I kind of stopped. And then I thought it was really interesting because this was the very next day, and he was actually, this is right in front of my home, and he was walking. And so I just asked him, hey, can I photograph you? And he was really kind, and he allowed me to. And I find it, fascinating. I mean, he really loves that stuff. I see him all the time. All right, it's a little slow. So this, we're gonna almost transition a little bit more into some of my portrait work. And so most of my portraits are large format portraits. The way I really approach that is, again, I think for me, shooting large format, it causes me to slow down even more than when I'm utilizing something like, 35 millimeter or a medium format. So the way I really do it is I kind of always have my camera set up first, and I just monitor, like I just watch the subject. And when I feel like there's something beautiful about their presence or very natural, I'll ask them to hold it. And then again, once I put my film holder into my camera, I kind of watch again, and then I'll be like, I'll let them know like, hey, hold it. And then that's really my process for photographing people, large format. So these are some of the images that I've captured over the last couple of years of people living in San Bernardino. This particular image was scouted by a friend. I guess he was mauled by a dog, and my friend asked him, hey, I have a friend who's a photographer. is there any way we can meet somewhere and she could take your picture? So he got his number and we showed up here. It's like a little shopping center off of Del Rosa. And I set up my camera 4x5. And we shot it. I mean, we were at the time we were being kicked out because I think they were like no photography allowed. But managed to have my friend kind of deal with security while I got the shot. And that's what we got. This is my sister's wedding. She also shot on 4x5. I do shoot some color, but I find that it's a lot more expensive. And I do process my own film at home. So I kind of don't shoot color 4x5 as often as I would like to. And so I find that a lot of my influences come from Richard Avedon, August Sanders, Mary Ellen Mark, Margaret Cameron. This image, I had really wanted a portrait of the ice cream man. He's a local ice cream man. Everybody knew him, but he didn't want to be photographed. So he kind of let us use the ice cream truck as a prop. So these were some friends posing. Shooting with a large format on the street in San Bernardino, or really with any big camera, can present certain issues. So I was out here, I came out really late on purpose to not disturb. This is right out in front of the Waterman Discount Mall. And so I kind of didn't want any foot traffic, and I didn't want to be in front of, you know, the building but I think there was security out and they called the cops on me. And they said that there was somebody in the parking lot with a machine gun. And so I got this wonderful visit from San Bernardino PD. And I just told him, hey, it's a camera, I'm shooting. And they sat there and watched. Luckily, the cop said that his wife was a photographer in the 80s and he was very familiar with medium format and large format photography. But I get that quite often. If I'm out, people will honk, they yell at me. I find it really interesting because I watch a lot of documentaries on street photographers, and they make it seem really easy. But when you're out there, kind of like in the hood or in the ghetto, some people, I'd say like 90% of the time people are really friendly, but every once in a while there are individuals that, you know, don't want to be photographed or think that you're photographing them. So there's a lot of confrontation, or at least personally, I've experienced a lot of confrontation. Just kind of, for me, it's just kind of apologizing and reiterating, hey, you know, I'm not photographing you, and just kind of move on. This image was taken on the side of the freeway, also 4x5 long exposure. I'd seen, you know, I drive past the sign all the time and thought it would be something really beautiful to capture at night. Part of me wishes I would have shot it in color. I think it would have been a little bit more dynamic. But the outcome of it, I was really excited about it, to be out there. I had a couple friends with me to keep me company and keep me safe, because, you know, just get a little bit worried sometimes being, you know, a lady out on the streets at night with a lot of equipment. But that's my work in a nutshell. So
Thank you for that. I keep on forgetting to unmute myself. So a couple of things that came up when you were giving your presentation. First of all, I love the breadth of your work. It's just really, you really cover so much territory. If it's not street photography, it's sort of a new topographics way of looking at your built environment, or it's portraiture, or, it's a more conceptual, like photographic typology with the couch. And I think that that's pretty amazing. One of the hardest things to do, I think, well, for me anyways, I don't know about all photographers, is photograph people. And so, you started talking about your interactions with people. Everybody in your photographs looks so at ease, and you would never know that you don't know them. It seems to me like they're at ease. They're also giving a lot. um, I wonder if you could talk about how you approach people, um, talk a little bit more about, some of those interactions, whether they're positive or negative, whatever. Um, yeah, tell us some stories about that.
So for me, the way it works is a lot of people that I don't know that I photograph are I'm kind of introduced to by people that I do know. So sometimes I'm kind of a loner, so the very few friends that I do have lots of friends. So I'm lucky in that respect. And if I see somebody that's interesting to me, I'll let them know, like, hey, I'm a photographer. Either I have a digital archive or even a book that I carry with me to show them, like, this is my work, this is what I do. I photograph, the Inland Empire, and I photograph people in the Inland Empire, and would you be interested in posing for me? And I think a lot of people see a 4x5 and they're a little intimidated. It kind of reminds me of Ricky Bobby in Talladega Nights, when it's like, what do I do with my hands? And so people are always like, hey, what do you want me to do? How do you want me to pose? Is there a particular way you want me to dress? And usually I tell them, specifically when it comes to wardrobe, that it's they can wear whatever. I always kind of preface, hey, if try to maybe steer away from certain colors just for contrast purposes. But other than that, it's just come as you are. And like I said, I always set up my camera first, and then I watch my subject. And when I see something that I think is very natural or beautiful, I'll tell them to hold it. And usually with that, it comes kind of a stiffness. And so while they're, I guess, thinking about it in those moments, I feel while I'm loading, my film into the back, they'll kind of, I guess, think that I'm not paying attention. So with that, they kind of ease up. And then when I see something where they don't look like they're overthinking, I shoot. Mm-hmm. And then again, sometimes after I shoot, put the dark side in, they'll move a little bit and they'll kind of give me something else, and I'll shoot it again. And so really it's just watching them and waiting for them to feel comfortable. So sometimes that process is a little bit longer than you would think. You kind of have to wait it out, like when that's it, that's the moment. And so that's kind of how I really approach photographing with something like a large format camera.
Yeah, I think it probably changes right from format to format. So like with the view camera, you can take your face away from the camera and have the cable release, mm-hmm. and wait for the person to relax, or to do something like you're talking about in fire. So you're not actually behind the camera, you're aside from the camera, and you can have more of a contact with them. And then with the medium format stuff, are you looking down? Are you using, you're using a 6x7 Pentax or What did you say? I'm sorry.
So originally, I think most of my images are taken on a Mamiya 6.7. And then a little bit after I did buy a Pentax and found that that was a little bit easier because with the Mamiya, I had the viewfinder and I did have to look down.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a heavy camera without a tripod. Things get a little tough, you know, especially when you're trying to kind of go in, shoot, be as inconspicuous as you can, you know, while you're on the street. So the transition from the Mamiya to the Pentax really is like a game changer because, you know, when you're looking, it's at waist level. And so
Yeah.
then there's that perspective. And when you can shoot something that's like the Pentax, it's a little bit more like a 35 millimeter, it brings, you know, the attention a little bit more to eye level.
Yeah, and at least with the film camera, 35 millimeter film camera, the camera is obscuring your face.
Yeah.
And so it's a different relationship with your subject. Is it possible for you to go back to one of the portraits that I love so much? It's so stunning. Mark?
Okay.
Back to Mark. Is that his name?
Yeah. Well, it's his name is actually Alejandro or Jonathan Alejandro Miramontes, but I know him as Mark. My bestie. That one, he's my best friend. So
okay.
Let me find that image. It's this one, right?
So, I mean, one of the things that, of course, is so present in your work is the, you know, the shallow depth of field effect that you're using, even for some of the landscapes, which is, you know, somewhat unexpected. But I love the effect on these larger format images that you're doing because, you know, the focus is really on the person and everything else becomes a little bit soft, right? I think it even just softens the environment that they're in. But this one so intrigues me. First of all, I love the use of light, right? There's this light up above, and then there's light from the computer, and maybe even a camera or something that seems to be illuminating his face, right? So I mean, the attention is called to his face because it's bright. It's, you know, almost the brightest thing in the photograph, except for, you know, the background where there's a white garage and above where there's a light, but you can really see his face. It's so well lit compared to everything else in the photograph. So that immediately draws you in. Plus, you know, he's in focus and the rest is sort of a soft focused appearance. But I love the, you know, the writing on the windshield. It says, does it say slow down?
Yeah.
Yeah, slow down. I mean, I'm hearing that, you know, when I'm looking at this image, it looks like he's slowing down, like he's drifting off somewhere, like he's daydreaming, you know. And it's such a vulnerable kind of state to photograph somebody in when apparently, I mean, I don't know, you know, where he's thinking of something, he's daydreaming and he's looking upwards at the sky. And it's very human, it's very almost, like I said, vulnerable, you know, and then everything else around him is just sort of happenstance, you know. I love his work boots and his, you know, Honda, I'm assuming it's his hatchback. I had one just like this. And then all the debris on the driveway. And I just think it's a remarkable photograph for all the little details that are there. They're described in the photograph. They're soft focus. The thing that is the subject, you know, the thing that it's really important that we see is in focus. And I think that technique that you're using where you're rendering things slightly out of focus, but they're in focus enough for us to read them, right? Is really, it's throughout your work. And I think it's very, very effective. And so this is why photographers, we get so caught up in talking about what camera we're using, what technique we're using, what film we're using, what digital camera we're using. It's because, you know, all of those things have an impact on how an image looks and how it's read, right? And so I love that about your work, is that you're really using everything you have at your disposal as a photographer to take these photographs of, I'm assuming, your neighborhood. Is this your neighborhood?
Yeah, that is my house, or a home that I used to live in. And that's actually my car, which is why it says slow down, because I would always, you know, I'm notorious for speeding. So he would draw stuff on my car and be like,
Slow down,
yeah,
Lizette.
slow down.
Slow down.
But yeah, I mean, like we were just hanging out, and I just thought like, wow, he looks really nice. So I was like, hey, can you hold that? And I ran in, I grabbed my 4x5, I set it up, and then propped a little light, and just took it.
It's beautiful. What is the vintage vehicle in the back?
Oh, I think it's a Buick.
Okay, yeah. It's really
With my uncles, he used to just.
one of my favorite photographs.
Thank you.
So can we also now go back to some of the images of the couch? You can pick whichever one.
Yeah.
So honestly, Lizette, I am just really, really interested in the logistics of these photographs. I mean, I'm interested in the locations that you chose to put the couch, but I'm also interested in how did you transport this couch from scene to scene, and how long did this work take? Was it over a year's time, a month? You know, tell me more about the project, basically.
It was actually pretty quick. So it was around I'd say like 2 weeks, because this was taken for an assignment at school. So you really, you know, during undergrad, you don't really have as much time to devote to little bodies of work that you do, you know, outside of the institution, right? You can take time and kind of finesse what it is that you're doing. So it was kind of like, hey, I got to get this couch. One, I got to get rid of it, and two, I got to get it, you know, to these places for the images and the series to be created, and then for the final installation. And so really, I just chose places that I either frequent quite often or drive by quite often. And some of them were chosen for the reason of like, hey, I have this big couch, I need to photograph it somewhere. Where can I put it where I'm not going to, you know, be harassed, or I'm not going to have somebody call the cops on me, and I have that kind of time to set it up and photograph it, because like they are all 4x5 shots. So with the help of my brother and my best friend, he had a little Chevy S10, and we kind of just put it on the back, tied it up, and then, you know, I kind of had the location scouted. So we would set up dates where we would be like, all right, we're going to take it here. And then we would move it and then drive it to another location and, you know, set it up and hope that, you know, hey, there's no cars coming. Or, you know, this one I found really interesting because I didn't notice it until I printed it for the exhibition, because I typically, if anybody knows me and my work or familiar with it, I print very small. I find that printing small is, for me, something that's a little bit precious, and allows a person to kind of really get up close to my images. So the scale of the images in the particular exhibition, it's really my second time ever printing big. I had printed big one time for a juried exhibition, again, my senior year at UCLA. And so in printing this, I never noticed that there, I don't know if you can see him, there's a little guy in the background.
Yeah,
watching.
I see him all right.
And so I find that there's some other images that I have where it seems to be with my large format images where there are people in the background watching. That I don't notice at the time. And sometimes like I said, I don't even notice till years after, because I just shoot and sometimes I just don't do anything with work. I'm just constantly just trying to make work.
Yeah, no, I think everybody's like that. We shoot, 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 shoot,
Yeah.
and then, look at it and decide what we're going to keep, what we're going to do away with. But this image is so haunting. It's so weird, like this figure back there. Again, rendered in soft focus, right?
Yeah,
But
so
what does the couch become for you?
for me, I think it was this fascination with living in, I guess, in the ghetto, is you see discarded furniture everywhere, everywhere in the streets, in the alleys. I've seen them on main streets, at bus stops, and I always found it very fascinating that these items that we have in our home, sometimes for years, that's the way that they're discarded. It's like, hey, and I understand that it's like a money thing, right? You have to go to the dump, you have to pay, and people they don't have the money or the time or the transportation, so they just dump them. And like, like specifically like with the bassinet, it's kind of like that's somebody's baby, lived in that bassinet for months, and it's just like out in the middle of the street. And for me, this ode to my couch was kind of replicating these discarded items that I'm so drawn to photographing while I walk the street. So I kind of took that and put it out there. Like, I love this couch. I don't want to get rid of this couch, but it's at the end of its, life. Like, really, I mean, there's 2 pillows in place of the 1 pillow that should have been there. And so it was completely broken. And I held on to it because I find that I assign kind of this like love, or I don't know how to explain it, but this like love to my inanimate objects because they've been with me, and I feel like I can remember all these memories. And that's what the couch was for me. It was years of partying, years of hanging out, and so many people lived and slept on that couch. And for me, even though I knew it was basically at this point trash, it was just really hard for me to get rid of. So it was like, hey, before I get rid of this, I want to immortalize it, and have that. And so that's what I went and I did, with the couch.
Were the locations that you put the couch in significant in any way?
Some of them. So this is my front yard. So again, it's kind of like, hey, this is, where from the inside to outside in the beginning. This is an alley behind my house. And so we always had a lot of people, because this wash was right behind the house. There would people who would jump into the yard and steal stuff. And so I find that kind of accessibility to, my home was kind of invasive. And I thought, some of these places, I guess they did mean something. Like I said, there are places that I visited, would hang out, here overlooking the train station and the water tower on Mount Vernon. This one particular, I just really like the street, and it's not, I guess, driven, because it's almost kind of residential and it's dead end. So I felt that it was a little bit easier to put the couch in a street, where I wouldn't have oncoming traffic or be blocking anything very important. So, I mean, other than that, that's kind of, the initial reasoning behind this particular location. And this is where my mom and my stepdad lived at the time. And I had a really hard time when I used to live with my mom. We were really close to my mother, and she moved out to start her life with my stepdad. And so for me, this was kind of, I put it in this place where I felt like my mom left me, to kind of begin her life again. And so this is why I chose this particular location. But I do shoot everything that has, as you mentioned with the portrait, I shoot everything, or I did. I'm trying to kind of broaden my horizon, but for a huge majority of my portrait work or even landscape work, specifically with large format, it's all shallow depth of field. I had this big thing on shooting only 5.6. So I shoot everything, shoot with the Schneider 210 lens, and everything is shot out of 5.6 f-stop. I think I just like the feel, again, the attention to one specific, the focus on one item where everything else is still visible but soft.
So I'm sorry, I'm muting myself in between us talking because my dog is scratching at the door. So I think let's move on to looking at some of the questions people are asking. So we have an anonymous attendee asking, have any of the negative interactions you've had when shooting ever deterred you from the art form entirely? And if so, how did you find your way back to the medium?
I don't think it's ever necessarily deterred me. I think I do get, like I said, I'm a very just anxious individual. So I don't want to come off like I'm trying to disrespect somebody or that I'm trying to exploit people or an environment. So I'm just careful. And I personally am not somebody who likes to be on camera. I do not like to have my picture taken. So I am completely empathetic and I completely understand if somebody is upset. And like I said, I think a majority of the time that I'm out there, it's been extremely positive. There are just some times where, like I said, because of the type of neighborhood it is, it can get a little sketchy, or people can get mad. I remember photographing a specific liquor store it's pretty hood. And I think the lady thought I was photographing her, but I wasn't. She wasn't even in the frame. But because the camera was pointed in that direction, and she was on her cell phone, and I remember her just like screaming at me. And so for me too, like I'm also a hothead, so I was kind of like, I kind of got hostile back with her, not because, but I'm like, hey, don't talk to me like that, but I was just like, you're not even in the frame, like chill out. But really, like I said, and then usually I do go out with like a male, just not for, I mean, a lot of the times I do go out alone, but in certain neighborhoods, or if there's something that I've kind of scouted when driving around, and I'm like, hey, it's probably best that I take somebody, there's usually somebody there with me. And so sometimes they even help filter out conversation. So that's always been really helpful for me, to have somebody, because like I said, I'm just naturally an introvert. I've been a big loner, so I have a real difficult time sometimes engaging or interacting with people. So having kind of somebody there sometimes helps to bridge that gap, or even put people at ease, right? So while I'm shooting, somebody will come up and talk to whoever I'm with. And it kind of, that also lends into, hey, while I'm taking this picture, can I take your portrait? And it's just been a pretty good experience. Like I said, overall, it's just here and there you kind of run into problems, which like I said, watching these documentaries, I never really saw that. Like I felt like, these photographers or photojournalists enter this world that's outside of themselves and are kind of met with open arms. And so kind of having that resistance was a little surprising to me. Not surprising, I mean, I kind of figured that would happen, but I was always hoping, hey, let's just, hopefully it's all positive all the time. But
I think that that's such a lie. I mean, we know it's not that way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm a little naive.
That's some kind of constructed myth. I don't know, to make other photographers feel bad or something. I had similar situations happen with the laundromat photographs that I did, the Lavanderia series.
Yeah.
So some people were indifferent, some people participated, A couple times I got run off. And, I had to just pick up the 4x5 on the tripod and just go, And I
Yeah.
also took somebody with me because those were at night. So
Yeah,
I had taken a friend with me who spoke really good Spanish, because I don't speak Spanish. So he would kind of navigate for me.
yeah, I find that
Wow.
especially shooting street photography with the 4x5, that's usually when I really do have somebody, because you are behind the dark cloth.
Yeah.
And so, it's not like, shooting 35 or medium format where you can still, you still have your peripheral view. So that's really one of the main things, right? Is having somebody just for, safety purposes.
Okay, there's 3 more questions. So this is from Nicholas Colon. Have you worked with digital? Maybe a combination of film and digital work. I
No.
think that's a reference to working hybrid, right? Where you're scanning your film.
So yeah, when it comes to that, I do scan my film. I have a film scanner at home, or well, right now on loan. But as far as digital, that's probably the only kind of digitization, I guess, that I use. In terms of camera equipment, no. I do not own a digital camera. I think the last time I owned a digital camera was over 10 years ago. I'd actually purchased one in hopes of not making work, but trying to kind of make a little bit of a living doing photographic work digitally. And I think I had it a week and somebody broke into my house and stole all my camera equipment. So it was kind of like, all right, well, I kind of gave it a try, bought it, and it's gone. But other than scanning work and kind of, utilizing Photoshop, I don't really use the digital medium in terms of camera equipment. And when I do have access, I think a huge portion of my work is in black and white. And so I prefer to be in the dark room. I prefer that whole kind of process. But I don't really have access to a dark room, and I work full time. So it's a little bit difficult. When I have had the opportunities, I enroll in community college courses to have access to the lab. But that's, it's been probably like 3 or 4 years since I've had that opportunity.
Right. Thank you for sharing your beautiful pieces. This is from Jennifer Hankey. Thank you for sharing your beautiful pieces. It's clear that you are putting in time and consideration into finding the shot that matches your vision. Could you talk a bit more about how much time it takes for you to set up a scene? On average, how many pictures are you taking to get that one picture that resonates with you?
I guess it all really depends on what it is that I'm shooting. If I go out on the street, it's just kind of, hey, I'm taking my camera and I'm gonna walk and see if there's any changes in the landscape. And usually I don't take more than 2 photographs, because when you use 6-7, it's really just 10 images on a roll. So it's like I feel like I have to make everything count because of the cost of everything. So I'm very aware of these things. So I kind of try to visualize what it is that I want from the particular scene, and then I kind of just set up. When it comes to large format, it takes a little bit more time just because the camera isn't as mobile as something, that like 35 or medium format. It's stationary, it's on a tripod. So there's definitely a lot more time taken setting those types of shots up. But overall, I slowed down. I've never really I don't think it takes that long. I'd say if I'm doing something that's large format, maybe 10 to 30 minutes, depending. And I usually only do 1 or 2 shots. And then sometimes if I do more, it's really just bracketing, because I'm kind of a little bit, I don't want to say unsure of the lighting, But just to make sure that, sometimes there's a huge disparity between your highlights and your shadows. And so just trying to make sure that there's a proper exposure there. Because up until recently, I really just used an incident light meter. So I didn't have spot meter. And I find that spot metering is a lot more helpful in terms of guessing that range, right? Like zone system kind of stuff. And so other than that, I mean, it's pretty quick. When I scout locations, it's kind of like, hey, I drove. It's not necessarily that I'm scouting like, hey, what can, but sometimes like, so the way it would work is like on my way home from work or on my way to work or to the store, I would see certain scenery. And so if I had my camera on me, I'll immediately just kind of stop and photograph it. Because I found that when either I don't have my camera or I wouldn't have the time to stop immediately, sometimes I would go back to those locations and it would either the thing that I was interested in would be gone or it would be completely changed. And this happens in a matter of sometimes even just a day. So my main practice was always have your camera. I always have some type of camera on me, just so that I never miss a shot.
There's two things here. So an anonymous attendee is asking if you knew about a project done in the 80s with a red couch. And then another participant whose name is Dan Gee looked it up, Googled it, and is asking, so they're asking if you were aware of a project called The Red Couch.
No.
By William Least Heat Moon.
I think maybe it kind of maybe sounds a little familiar, but I'm thinking now that it's being mentioned, I think vaguely,
Yeah, I'm vaguely aware of that project too, but it's not an influence, basically, it's there. Okay, next question. This is Heidi Ortiz. Thank you, Lizette. Your work is beautiful. It's very obvious your love and appreciation for photography. I would like to know when and how you fell in love with photography.
Thanks, Heidi. So for me, I started photography when I was 14 years old. So like I said, I was just kind of always a loner, very interested in art, but I always felt like I wasn't artistic, like I didn't have an artistic bone and I just wanted to be, like I wanted to draw or I wanted to paint and I sucked. It was like, and then when I think of like my freshman year, there was a photo club, like an after school photo program. And I thought, hey, it seems interesting. And so I took it, and for me, it was so life-changing. I think everybody else kind of just took it just to take it, to see what it was about. And after my first time in the darkroom, it was just revolutionary to me, like that you could take this image, you can create something, and then you can put it into this enlarger and put it on a sheet of paper and then dip that paper into chemicals, and then there it is, and so for me, that's where my love really started. And I took photo all throughout high school after that, and really, if I look back at those pictures, they're really all just like flowers or the high school, because you're kind of 9th, 10th grader, you can't really leave campus and have a car. So it's my high school friends, and then after that, going into community college, I kind of always took it as an elective, just because I had originally wanted to be like a writer, go into law, and I just thought like, hey, this fulfills kind of requirements for for transfer. And I think after a while, it was just like, you know what, if I'm going to go to school, if I'm going to do this, then this is really what I want to do in terms of, you know, getting a degree and then hoping that somehow I can make a living creating art.
Who
But
who
that's where,
was who was
Go
at
ahead.
UCLA? Who was at UCLA when you were there?
Catherine Opie. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting everybody right now. I'm drawing a blank. I
I
know.
guess what I'm going to ask, I mean, that's the wrong question. Were you influenced by your professors, and who were you influenced by at UCLA? I guess is a better way to ask the question.
I think that after getting to know the professors, like Opie, it was definitely influential. I think taking her, I had Barbara Kruger, which was very interesting, a very, very wise lady. So they were some of my bigger influences. But I honestly was not familiar with their work prior to UCLA. I had no idea about anybody, any of the faculty. I honestly, if I'm going to be completely honest, I kind of chose it just because it's UCLA. You know, I was ecstatic. I didn't ever think it was even a possibility that I would ever even get in. I just kind of, it was a free application and I just crossed my fingers, and, you know, with a lot of luck, I guess, and hard work, you know, it happened. But prior to that, I had never seen bodies of work like that. I think my influences were a lot of older black and white photographers. And I think because of the way that I was taught about these photographers in community college, we never really delved into kind of the conceptual aspect of those bodies of work. I was just so enamored by these beautiful images of these people. And so my favorite photographers are usually portrait photographers, and that's where, you know, that's really what influenced me to shoot portraits. Like Avedon, you know, in the American West was it was just, that work is just absolutely beautiful to me. August Sander photographing, you know, working class people in Europe. And I felt that that's what I wanted to lend, was my experience and I guess like my people, you know, like not necessarily just like my people in terms of like raza, but, you know, memorializing these people that I love. And so I always see, you know, they're photographing strangers, and I photograph some strangers, but a lot of people that I do know or are acquaintances. And I always felt that if I could leave anything behind or photograph anything, that why not photograph the people that are most precious to me. And so I kind of just really dove into photographing family, friends, and acquaintances for that reason.
No, that makes sense. That, like I said, that photograph of your friend Mark is just, you know, it's like a Velasquez painting. There's just so much there. Anyways, so I think we're going to conclude the talk. There's no more questions. Thank you so much, Lizette. I really appreciate you showing up tonight and giving your all. And the show is made, you know, I feel like your work rounds out the show. You know, you bring some of the Inland Empire into the show, right? But also the practices. The work is so much about neighborhood and people and relationship. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Christina.
Okay, let's see. Hi, everyone. Sorry.
It's okay.
Figure out the unmuting myself and all of that. Thank you again so much, Lizette and Christina, for doing this. This has been a fantastic talk. And I wanted to share with everyone really quickly before you go, some links to the previous talks for this exhibition for Tierra Entre Medio. I have put in the YouTube links for Arlene's talk and Idi's talk. And so hopefully you can copy paste those really quick. And then the link for Christina's upcoming talk on February 16th, where we'll talk about her new work in the exhibition with Sean Noriega. And I think that's it for tonight. But again, thank you so much. This has been fantastic to learn more about your work, Lizette, especially, learn more about the work that's in the exhibition, and then even your broader work that isn't on view. So again, we're really appreciate you, and we'll get this up on YouTube. So please share with anyone who wasn't able to make it tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.